very warm welcome to the first in our new series of seminars here at the Centre for Muslim Christian Studies. My name is Richard McCallum, and I'm part of the academic team here, and we'll be chairing this afternoon's seminar. This series is following up from a conference that we held over the summer, which was called Next Generation Researchers, and we brought together both in person here in Oxford, but also online, over 20 researchers in Christian-Muslim relations who are either finishing PhDs or have recently finished PhDs. And we spent a couple of days looking at all the different research that people are doing and hearing papers and so on. And it was a very rich time. And we decided that it was such a rich time that we wanted to share it with all of you as well. And so we've asked some of those who presented papers during that Next Generation Researcher Conference to present papers during this term. And we're delighted that the first of our speakers today is Ghaith al-Qudah, who's joining us today from Amman in Jordan. And Ghaith presented during the conference here in Oxford. He actually travelled to the UK and was with us in person, which was a great pleasure to meet you, Ghaith. And we're delighted that you're with us this afternoon, and you're going to be helping us to think about this question of the impact of law on Christian-Muslim relations. And you've got this fascinating example to do with Christian widows. So we're very much looking forward to hearing from Ghaith. He will speak for about 45 minutes. And then there will be plenty of time after that for question and answer and discussion as well. So please stay with us for that. But now, Ghaith, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. First of all, I'm deeply honored to be present online at this significant conference. And I would like to express my gratitude to all the researchers and thinkers who have contributed to the development of this project. Before delving into the research, as I mentioned in the previous conference, I feel compelled to share a personal story that has inspired my investigation in this research. That one of my cousins in Jordan married a Greek Christian woman. They lived together for many years and were blessed with 4 children. However, upon his passing, his wife discovered that, unfortunately, she was unable to inherit from her husband, her Muslim husband, according to the Jordanian personal status law, which is derived from the Islamic jurisprudence law. The law stipulates that only children are entitled to inherit, while spouses are excluded. Fortunately, her children, recognizing the injustice, decided to return her rightful share of the inheritance. This story actually deeply affected me, prompting me to explore the origins of this issue and the reasoning behind the Muslim jurists' conclusion. I posed several research questions in my research. The first being whether inheritance between relatives is determined by religious affiliation or familial ties. Are there any references in the Quran that support this notion? Furthermore, what were the foundational principles upon which the jurists in Islam based their ruling on? And does this align with the concept of absolute divine justice, as mentioned in Quran? Dr. Richard, if you don't mind, I would like to share my research paper, please. Can I research it, please? Can I, yeah, I'll join it right now. Is that okay? Everything is okay? You can hear me, Dr. Richard, and everybody?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Just speak as close to the microphone as you can, and we can see your PowerPoint.
Yeah,
that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we start. This is the name of my research, the impact of Islamic law on Christian-Muslim relations, the inheritance of Christian widow from her deceased Muslim husband as an example. Okay, I would like to do something in my screen to see the full. I need to move some. Sorry, I need to move some pictures here and there. Okay. Okay. I made a small abstract to this regard, at least to know where we are going. This article aims to discuss the issue of inheritance of Christian widow from her deceased Muslim husband, according to the understanding of Islamic law by Muslim scholars. It will thus explore if Islamic law contributed to affect relationship between Christians and Muslims by studying and tackling this inheritance issue. Furthermore, it will employ the scholars' opinions to gain a better understanding for their rulings in their historical and social circumstances. The methodology employed will rely heavily on understanding tourists' tools in interpretation of prophetic narration, which is from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that there is a very famous narration. A Muslim does not inherit from an infidel, and an infidel does not inherit from a Muslim, regarding how Muslim scholars made their rulings in this case and on what basis. The inheritance in case of a difference in religion, always mentioned in a negative way in many cases as a tool for ruining the relation between Muslims and Christians, and always considered to be against the concept of equal human rights and the code of justice. This research suggests strongly to revise and re-examine the Islamic law and fatwa regarding this issue. And in today's post-modern interdependent world, where Muslims and Christians are increasingly living and working together side by side, either in Muslim majority countries or in other countries, there's a greater need to understand each other and a greater need to re-examine some Islamic rulings related to dealing with each other. However, the researcher will review the most important discussions and opinions related to this issue, deducted only from 4 Sunni Muslim doctrines. You know that we do have more than 12 or 14 Muslim doctrines. I only focus on 4 doctrines. Furthermore, which is from the Sunni Muslims. Furthermore, the issue of inheritance shall be reviewed and discussed and supported with some contemporary opinions for some scholars and Muslim answers for fatwa in the world. After which the researcher or I will post my comments and points of view in this regard. I will start by mentioning that the legitimacy of others in Islam is not based on whether their belief is true or false, but that legitimacy is based on the truth that Islam has decided from the very beginning that they are human beings inside the Muslim societies, the right to protection, immunity, and care. The legitimacy of others in Islam and its immunity is clearly stated in the noble verse in the Quran that says, O you who have believed, be standing firm for Allah, witness injustice, and do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just. That is near to righteousness, and fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is acquainted with what we do. The Quran stresses that origin in addressing others and to call them to the religion of Allah through them, in which Muslims should respect others' opinions and beliefs and not to harm them. They are human beings like Muslims and must be respected and appreciated, which is mentioned in this verse also of Quran. And do not argue with the people of the scripture except in a way that is best, except for those who commit injustice among them, and say, we believe in that which has been revealed to us and revealed to you, and our God and your God is one, and we are Muslims in submission to him. Without doubt, this verse commands the prophets and therefore the Muslims to establish relations with people of the book and to unite around common issues. It is remarkable that the first constitution of the Islamic State in the era of the Prophet Muhammad, known by Medina Charter, signed in the year 622, which the Prophet brokered between the Muslims, polytheists, tribes of Medina, and Jewish, considered the people of the book to be citizens with full citizenship rights. It was, by the way, 1,400 years back in the history. Practice their worship free and support the protection of the state then. This indicates a clear message that the concept of belonging to the homeland and citizenship does not contradict at all with the difference of religion. The historical practices of the four righteous caliphs when dealing with the people of the book were concerned with the idea that defending human dignity is a basic duty of the Muslim community. Any derogation from this dignity is in any way detrimental to the value of Islam. I observed that most of the authentic historical stories and the narrations of the caliphs revolve around the importance of the dignity of human beings, assuring the values of justice, tolerance, good neighborhoods, respect, with all constitutional rich for us today to follow and understand, being taken from the correct Quranic and prophetic understanding of human freedom and dignity. How to deal with the Islamic law or fatwa? Islamic law or fatwa, we call it in Arabic fatwa. Most of the scholars of Islam have agreed that the people of the book have a very clear rights within the Islamic State. We can see this spirit clearly in most of the famous books written by the scholars of Islam. Nevertheless, this strange issue I have noted in some writings of past or contemporary jurists, Muslim jurists or scholars, was their rejection of the concept of full citizenship for non-Muslims within the Islamic State. The concept was always limited to naming them, unfortunately, as people of the book, having rights that must be preserved, but not as a full citizenship. However, there are some rulings related to the dealing with Christians and Jews in some social circumstances that seem to me contradictory to the verses of Quran, which remind us that fatwa, which are the official rulings of the scholars of Islam, derived from the understanding of Islamic law, is a tool of the religion to understand it by humans. And humans do make mistakes. However, these fatwa would not be valid for every place and time and hope to be always revised and re-examined to achieve the interests of people, which we call it in Arabic maslaha. The interests of people, the fatwa in Islamic jurisprudence should follow the interests of people, and with the interests, so it could be defined and should be agreed for. But basically, the interests of people or maslaha is the major thing to be followed regarding the fatwa. I believe that it is very important always to study and understand the historical and social context in which the fatwa was issued. It is not out of context to mention the rulings of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya. He was one of the famous scholars who died in the year 1350. In his famous book, which was named in Arabic Ahkam al-Dhimma, or rulings for non-Muslims, which is the major reference book in this aspect, should be understood in the historical and social context in which the book has been published. And by the way, unfortunately, the ISIS they depend most of their rulings when dealing with others. They took some rulings from this book and misuse it and misguiding the fatwa for their own benefit, basing on this book, in this rulings taken from this book. I say that any function from the original context in terms of circumstances and the place to bring it forward to nowadays reality will lead to contradictory results related to understanding the inclusivity of Islam and its tolerance. I mean that very important when we read the Islamic fatwa or Islamic law to understand the geopolitics, to understand the historical context, understand the political context, because for sure politics have influence on the fatwa, influence on the Islamic law, and the social circumstances does have also influence. So we cannot bring the fatwa, for example, 1,000 years back in the history and bring it nowadays without understanding the circumstances and what was going on at that time. Also, it's very important to mention here that the scholars of Islam unfortunately used the title kafir, infidel, when tackling the issue of the inheritance for non-Muslims. Although I do not agree totally with this title, kafir or infidel, to be used to mention the Christians or Jews, and would prefer and insist always to use the Quranic and prophetic terms when studying the relation with them, which is Ahl al-Kitab or Nasara or Christians or Jews, without mentioning that, because they are not infidel. But unfortunately, most of the jurists and the Islamic Muslim scholars, they are saying they are, when they use this narration from the Prophet Muhammad, they mention that they are infidel, which has this term itself. It needs maybe more research to be understood and to know what is the kafir means in Arabic and in the Quranic terms. However, it was mentioned like this, unfortunately, literally in the Arabic books of fiqh, Islamic law, according to the understanding of the school of Islam. This is the fiqh. When dealing with this issue, I shall keep it as it was mentioned in the major books of fiqh, when mentioning the different opinions of the scholars. When I now tackle the issue step by step and to see what was going on at that time. By the way, Christians and Jews are discussed and mentioned in Quran and Sunnah through the use of several abbreviations, including the collective term people of the book or Ahl al-Kitab, the Arabic and biblical name for Christians, Nasara, or in the Bible, Nazarena, or what is Nazarene, or the meaning of Nazarene in the Bible means the watchers who keep the testimony and true, and also was named in the Ahl al-Dhimma in the Muslim books. So these are the a lot of names for the non-Muslims inside the. If we go to read the books of fiqh, you can find all these names: Ahl al-Kitab, people of the book, Nasara, and Ahl al-Dhimma. In discussing the scholars' point of views, I mentioned only the views, as I mentioned, of the four major schools of jurisprudence. The opinion of Ibn Qayyim Jawziyya also will be mentioned because he is very famous in this aspect, and his book was a reference for more than hundreds of years for most of the Islamic sects. The opinion of Ibn Qayyim Jawziyya will be mentioned, as well as rulings from his famous book, which is in Arabic, Ahkam al-Adnan, which is the ruling for the people of the book. The opinion of the other school of fiqh was not addressed due to the need of greater expansion to discuss its various views. However, I did some research, which is not mentioned here in my research, that all of the Muslim doctrines are depriving the Christian widow from her inheritance from her Muslim husband, all of them. But it was not mentioned because they have to have also my references, unfortunately. Furthermore, on a specific issue, I will refer to the rulings of European Council for Fatwa and Research, which is ECFR, as well as referring to the rulings of Yusuf Qardawi in this regard, one of the most well-known, maybe the Muslim scholars nowadays. I would like to say this. I like this state from Oliver Roy in his book. He mentioned that the key question is not what the Quran actually says, but what Muslims say the Quran says. This is the key question, that how we understand Quran, how the jurists, how the scholars understand the verses of Quran, how they understand the narrations of the prophets and how they deal with it. This is the key question always. Based on the above, the following points shall be discussed in this research. Now, we have two issues. The inheritance of a Muslim from a non-Muslim. If there's a Muslim guy, is he allowed to inherit it from a non-Muslim? There are two opinions for scholars in this regard, and every opinion has its own evidence based on the understanding of the jurists to the narration of the Prophet with this regard. First opinion, a Muslim does not inherit a kafir. This is the opinion of the majority. Kafir, the non-Muslim, which is Jews or Christian, and I don't like to use this term, but this is how it comes in the books of fiqh. This is the opinion of the majority of the scholars of Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali, concluded from their major books in Islamic law, which is not, I don't have maybe enough space here to mention all the references or the books here. Their proof and evidences in this regard is, they have two proofs. The first one, the narration reported from the Prophet, which is I mentioned at the beginning of my research. A Muslim cannot be the heir of a kafir, infidel. Nor can a kafir, infidel, be the heir of a Muslim. And second one, the concept of Allah's wilaya. This is very important concept which should be discussed also, and it needs maybe a lot of research to understand it. Allah's wilaya is denied between infidels and Muslims. And by the way, again, ISIS misused this concept when they made their propaganda regarding what they are doing, why they are killing non-Muslims, why they are, for example, when they arrested Zaydians, the Christians in Iraq and brought them to Syria, they used all these terms, Allah's and wilaya and kafir, unfortunately. So the concept of Allah's is denied between infidels and Muslims, and the inheritance has a meaning of wilaya and support. So they do not inherit each other for this understanding. They mentioned this first. So now we can see how they, some part of the scholars of Islam understood the verses and understood the narration of the prophets. So now we have the first opinion: Muslim does not inherit a kafir. Maybe it's very important to mention this verse, or you who have believed, do not take the Jews and Christians as allies. They are in fact allies of one another. In addition, whoever is an ally to them among you, then indeed he is one of them. Indeed, Allah guides not the wrongdoing people. This is a verse in the Quran, and I believe it was misunderstood by by some scholars in Islam. Every single verse in the Quran most probably has a purposes that it came down to the earth to the Prophet Muhammad, and there was a story behind this verse when it was revealed down. There was the circumstances. We have to understand it. Did God mean this, or what is the meaning of Allah's? What is the story behind this? So we cannot take it like this, again, without discussion the circumstances behind these verses. So, and the second opinion regarding the inheritance of a Muslim from non-Muslim, a Muslim inherits the kafir. They allow the Muslim to inherit the non-Muslim. This is the opinion of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, whom are the followers and companions of the Prophet Muhammad. Their proof and evidence in this regard, and please concentrate with me regarding their proof in this regard. And this is, I take it from their books, Arabic books, the fiqh books. Firstly, the narration of the Prophet. Islam is always superior and should never be surpassed. Secondly, the hadith narrated by the companion, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when he was one of the companions, when he was asked about Jewish heritage and had a Muslim hair, he said, I heard the Prophet say, Islam increases and does not diminish. He therefore appointed a Muslim heir of a non-Muslim. This was one of their bases or proof to in this regard, to prove that the Muslim can inherit from a non-Muslim. Thirdly, on the basis of the permissibility of Muslim men to marry women of the people of the book, and the sensitivity of the marriage of the people of the book to Muslim women. The second issue now, which we'll discuss it, just to look at it and to understand the scholars of Islam opinion regarding the inheritance of a non-Muslim from a Muslim. Muslim, first we discussed the Muslim from non-Muslim. It has two opinions. Now we will discuss the inheritance of non-Muslim from a Muslim. The scholars of different schools of jurisprudence all agree that it is not permissible for a Catholic, they mean Christians and Jews, to inherit from a Muslim based on the narration from the Prophet. The Muslim cannot be the heir of the Catholic, nor can a Catholic be the heir of the Muslim. By the way, all the personal status law in most of the Arabic countries are depriving the Christian inheritance after the death of her husband based on this narration, and it is written by law, and she is not allowed to inherit. This is the view of the Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanafi, and Hanbali, and narrated by Khalifats Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and other companions and followers. For sure, I do have references for all this information, but it's not. I cannot put you here because of time, space, and time limits. How much time remaining, Dr. Richard, for me?
About 15 minutes, if you want it.
Okay, good. Now, if we need to study this issue and analyze it, I believe that it's important to discuss this issue from different points of provisions in view, to suggest and create a room for dialogue with the scholars of law, scholars of Sunnah, and other social specialists to study the possibility of revising and re-examining the rules of inheritance in this specific case. In light of the above, it seems that the consensus behind depriving the non-Muslim wife of inheritance is based on one single narration, which is a Muslim cannot be the heir of Kafir. And from now on, I will mention it like major hadith, which is the narration of the prophets. I will justify my point of view and suggestion revising the rulings and fatwa in this case based on the following notes and comments. When examining the verses concerning the heirs in chapter An-Nisa, which is Surah An-Nisa at the Quran, the woman, this surah, this chapter, discussed in details the inheritance issue and most of the women's issues in a very beautiful, comprehensive way. I found that the verses have begun to call out to all mankind, fear you, Lord, who created you from one soul and created from its mates and dispersed from both of them many men and women. However, upon reaching the verses of the heirs in the same chapter, the verses did not establish a condition for Muslims only in inheritance, but kept it open. And I believe that this is contrary to the understanding of the major hadith by the scholar of fiqh, which was relied upon to deprive the non-Muslim wife of the inheritance of her husband. I mean that it was not mentioned in the Quran, which is the basis for rulings, should be always that the inheritance issue is related to religious ties. Furthermore, the verses did not refer to the husband and or father or brothers and sisters as Muslims, but tackled about them based on the blood and brotherhood without mentioning their religion. The verses also speak beautifully about an important visualization as required during the distribution of inheritance as follows. And when other relatives and orphans and the needy are present at the time of division, then provide for them something out of the estate and speak to them words of appropriate kindness. The first kin or the poor or orphans may be non-Muslims. This is my understanding, but it is noted that the Quran erred in a very beautiful way to give them from this inheritance regardless of their religion. Referring to the legal basis that allows the now I'm moving to the step number 2 in discussing the issue. By referring to the legal basis that allows the Muslim man to marry a Christian or Jews Jewish women, which obligates the Muslim to give the dowry to the, which is like a gift before marriage to the Muslim wife as well as to the non-Muslim wife. Therefore, the Quran has reserved for the non-Muslim wife her financial rights as it is reserved for the Muslim wife. In the Quran, it was not mentioned, give only the Muslim wife her dowry or her gift. Give your wife without the slightest distinction or discrimination before marriage as per the verse, which is here. We can say this day, all good foods have been made lawful, and the food of those who were given the scripture, it means that Christians and Jews, is lawful for you, and your food is lawful for them, and lawful in marriage are chaste women from among the believers and chaste women from among those who were given the scripture before you. When you have given them their due compensation, desiring chastity. Can anyone understand the financial prohibition of the rights of the non-Muslim wife from the inheritance of her husband, considering saving, or hifz in Arabic, saving her financial rights at the beginning of the marriage contract? Is it appropriate to make the wife ask people to help her and need them after the death of her husband because of depriving her from her inheritance and financial rights due to her religion, while she did not in the first place see it to be an obstacle to marry her Muslim husband, regardless the social pressure she probably would later face? Is it not punishing her indirectly for not converting into Islam, while the Holy Quran saying or declares there shall be no combination in or acceptance of the religion? Is it not strange that Islam reassured her freedom and rights in deciding her religion, and then we deprive her from inheritance because of her religion? Now I move to the third one, which is the concept of charity. The concept of charity in Quran, according to the verses, is not related to the religion at all. I mean, to whom you will pay the charity. This is the verse in the Quran, and from there, proprietors was given the right of the needy, petinator, and the deprived. The right to charity here is limited to question and need. In other verses, charity is given to the poor, we call it in Arabic masakin, and others without any limitations to the religion of these people with their different categories. If this is the case of charity, then what is the ruling on inheritance, which is more closer? The relationship in inheritance or marriage is much more stronger. The bond is much more stronger than the masakin or poor people, which is more important and crucial than the charity issue. God said, for men is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave, and for women is a share of what their parents and close relatives leave, be it little or much, an obligatory share. Now, we need to examine the narrations of the Prophet, which is the main narration that most or all of the scholars are depending on this narration. I find that all the narrations related to the Prophet that came about the people of different faiths, name them only as people of the book, or Christians, or Nasara, or Jews, Yahud, Al-Dhimma. These are the names which Muhammad, the Prophet, peace be upon him, no single narration in all the narrations of the Prophet had ever spoken about them in terms of kafir. This is a big question. I was asking, why only we have tens of narrations or hundreds of narrations from the Sirah or of the narration of the Prophet Muhammad that are mentioning Christians, Nasara, Jews, not either one single narration mentioning them as kafir. This is hoped to be restudied and re-examined deeply to know if the major hadith, which we mentioned at the beginning, is applicable or not as a base for prohibition of the inheritance for Ahl-Adillah. Are they the targeted category in this major hadith or not? We have to understand, we have to ask this question. We have to understand what is the circumstances when this narration was narrated. What is the historical context and social restrictions in which this hadith was probably narrated? What is the authenticity of this chain of narrations of this hadith? Can we call the people of the book as infidels or kafir? Absolutely not. I have also noticed during my study for the interpretation of the scholars of, there's a very famous scholar, who is specialized in the interpretation of Quran, al-Qurtubi, who died in 1271, when talking about the issue of reconciliation with the polytheists of Quraysh, which is the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad at al-Hudaybiyah site, which is a site near Mecca, during the Prophet time, which is stated that the one who came to the Prophet from the people of Mecca should be returned to them. There was agreement between the Prophet and the polytheists of Mecca. God has also ordered Muslims not to keep their infidels' wives and should divorce them, kafirs or infidels, referring to the text, and hold not to marriage bonds with disbelieving women, but ask for what you have spent and let them ask for what they have spent. That is the judgment of Allah. So God ordered Muslims at that time to not to keep their infidel wives who are not believing in God. Al-Qurtubi said that the meaning of kufr is meant for women who are worshippers of idols, because this term, kafir, disbeliever, it is a special term in Quran given to worshippers of idols. So I concluded from this, and not given to the people of this was not given to the people of the book, because God always saying in the Quran, people of the book, and did not mention them as kuffar. The limitation that we are not allowed to call the people of the book as kuffar in any case when addressing them, nor to consider any legal rule to be derived on this basis. The European Council for Fatwa and Research mentioned in their rulings in this regard, this is very important point of view from them at this time, that the Council considers that Muslims should not be deprived of their inheritance recommended to them by their non-Muslims relatives, and that this is not opposed to the correct hadith. A Muslim does not inherit a kafir, which is aimed to carrying on the infidel or who is fighting Muslims, kafir harbi in Arabic. So they distinguish between the kafir who is, or infidel who is not fighting Muslims, and the kafir who is fighting Muslims. So this is a good point of view to start and discuss the hadith with this regard, based on this regard. Also, the council also noted that at the beginning of Islam, Muslims were not deprived of the inheritance of their non-Muslim relatives. As a matter of fact, this was the opinion of some companions. I believe that the jurisprudential opinion permitting Muslims to inherit from non-Muslims is a violation of the second part of the major hadith. I mean that if hadith is prohibiting Muslims and non-Muslims to inherit from each other, so here the Council, European Council, is allowing Muslims to inherit from non-Muslims and not allowing non-Muslims to inherit from Muslims. And this is not correct, by the way. I believe this is not true. This is double standards in dealing with the hadith. There's also a very famous scholar, his name is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, and he mentioned something nice in this regard, even though he has a very famous book, which is named in Arabic, Ahkam al-Dhimma, Rulings of the People of the Book. In his book, there are, from my point of view, there are some rulings which are humanizing or not fit with the standard of respect the humans in Islam. Anyhow, maybe also this is another issue which we have to discuss maybe later on. If we look to Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya with this regard in his book, he mentioned something nice in which he allowed and encouraged the family members to support each other financially, even in case of difference of religion. He said being virtuous and kind with relatives is a must, even if they were infidels. It is imposed no matter each has his own different religion. It's imposed even if the father cannot afford it because it is soothing and condolence. He mentioned here Allah highlights the importance of family ties, even if they were infidels. Religion does not divide the relatives' rights in Islam, no matter what. Based on his understanding of this verse, this is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, the scholar, worship Allah and associate nothing with him, and to parents do good, and to relatives, orphans, the needy, the near neighbor, the neighbor farther away, the companion at your side, the traveler, and those whom your right hand possesses. Indeed, Allah does not like those who are self-deluding and boastful. So Ibn Qayyim Jawziyya is saying that if you're helping others financially, there's no connection between religion and Christ. Okay. All we can say that now also all people mentioned in this holy verse have financial rights in spending, either they were neighbors, friends, relatives, who is needy in general. It's obvious to me when analyzing this ruling also that the point is not prohibiting Muslims from supporting their relatives financially, even if they are infidels, but it appears how to interpret and understand the text of the major hadith that seems to prohibit non-Muslim inheritance from Muslim, which is also a financial issue. Is it not out of context to mention that the tie between wife and husband is much stronger than any tie between relatives? If we come to the conclusions, do I have like 5 minutes, Dr. Richard?
Sorry, do you have the right? What?
Do I have 5 minutes?
Oh, yes, yes, you do. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. The concept of Ahl al-Dhimma was a very advanced and perfect concept in the era of at that time, at the prophetic time, the era of killing and lack of respect for the human beings in most of these civilizations at that time, which is 1,500 years back in the history. It could be easily noted that all the provisions related to dhimmis, whom are, we say, dhimmis are Christians and Jews, revolve around the importance of the dignity of a human being, assuring the values of justice, tolerance, good neighbors, and respect, all of which constitute a rich roadmap for us today to follow and understand, being taken from the correct Quranic and prophetic understanding of human freedom and dignity, which has always been a priority after the secondance of human life and safety. The legitimacy of others in Islam is based on the fact that Islam has decided from the very beginning that they are human beings, recognizing all their rights, such as protection, immunity, and care. In addition, that is not based on their belief under any circumstances. This is a picture, by the way, for Ibn Taymiyyah, the teacher of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya. Ibn Taymiyyah has a very famous Muslim scholars like Ibn Kathir, Ibn al-Dhahabi, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, and his rulings are very famous in this regard. I believe that all of you know about Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya. We can say that most of the past and contemporary jurists who considered the people of the book as a separate structure inside the Muslim community did not provide convincing proof of what they concluded in this regard. Thus, all their fatwa within regard are hoped to be revised and reconsidered and not to be adopted or quoted as they are, unless a better understanding for the social political context is conducted. Major issues discussed in this article is the inheritance, which is always mentioned, unfortunately, in a negative way, in many cases, as a tool for ruling the relation between Muslims and Christians, and always considered to be against the concept of equal human rights and the code of justice. This article suggests strongly to revise and re-examine all rulings and fatwa regarding this issue, taking into consideration re-understanding the historical context in which the previous rulings were concluded, as well as re-examining the chain of narrations of the major hadith. There are some rulings related to dealing with the Christians in some social circumstances that seem to me contradictory to the verses of the Quran, which reminds us that fatwa is a tool of the religion to understand it and is understood by human scholars, as I mentioned, and the humans who make mistakes. However, these fatwa could not be valid for every place and time and have always to be revised and re-examined. Therefore, the article urges the scholars of Islam to revise and re-examine the fatwa in this aspect, bearing in mind that current changes in the world's conditions and the historical context nowadays. This article suggests creating a room for dialogue with the scholars of fiqh and scholars of hadith. Here in Islam, we have scholars specialized in fiqh, scholars specialized in hadith, and others are specialized in the Quranic interpretation, and other specialized social researchers to study the possibility of re-examining and revising the articles among personal status laws in the Arab and Muslim countries related to the issue of inheritance for the Christian woman, as most of them are depriving the Christian widow from her inheritance from the Muslim husband. This is not meant to keep pushing for a new legislative provision in inheritance rules, but rather to encourage more deep studies and researchers for these cases based on the concept of maqasid al-sharia, whose main objectives, which is this is our maqasid al-sharia, the reason behind rulings, whose main objectives are to achieve equality and justice for all human beings, regardless of their religion, in order to act in parallel with the Human Rights Declaration, as well as the reasoning of the modern scholars. It is hoped that an academic project also as well to be adopted in the Muslim world, supported by the faculties of Islamic law, in order to urging the students to allocate some of their theses and articles to be examined and re-study all of the jurisprudential issues related to the dealing with others in Islam. And this is, by the way, what I'm trying to do now in my PhD studying. My thesis hopefully is going to be regarding re-study a very famous book in Islam, which is the book of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, very famous scholar in Islam. The book named Ahkam Ahl-Dhimma, the rulings for non-Muslims. I made my proposal to my university. I need to revise and rediscuss this book, re-examine the rulings which came in this book regarding non-Muslims. I read this book 2 or 3 times, and I found that there are a lot of articles are against the code of justice in Islam, code of justice nowadays. So I'm urging all universities, especially in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, to make special projects with this regard. And it's very important, as mentioned, studying the historical, social, political circumstances and context to find out if the past fatwa and rulings are still valid and applicable nowadays. Finally, in conclusion, it's my hope that this exploration will shed light on the misconceptions surrounding inheritance law regarding the non-Muslims, and to know how did that affected the Christian-Muslim relationship over decades and centuries. And by the way, this picture from my country, Jordan, you can see here the church, and you can see the mosque beside each other. In Jordan, we have an excellent relationship between Muslims and Christians, and we live with each other since hundreds of years. And there's no separation based on religion in Jordan. We are all Jordanians, Muslims and Christians, and the citizenship is our umbrella. It's not the religion. So we all love Jordan. We all live in Jordan based on this fact. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for being late. Maybe I took much more time than allowed for me. Thank you, everybody, and I'm ready for any question. Thank you so much.